Welcome back into Pushing the Pile here. We're going through some superlatives from night one of the NFL draft. Chris, who did you have as the best pick? We saw 32 of them. Which one was the best one last night?
Well, I think we already talked about it, but to go more at length about Mason Graham to the Browns, I think, again, to get that extra first-round pick is absolutely huge. Again, the boldness from GM Andrew Berry, I just thought that was something that we should really be applauding him for, because for the longest time, the last couple months, we all had almost written in Sharpie that it was going to be Travis Hunter to Cleveland. And to get someone that is very young, that plays a position that I think is growing in importance in defensive tackle, who is a 3-down player, helps Myles Garrett in the twilight of his career, maybe take a little bit of attention off him. And again, to get those extra picks for a team that is clearly rebuilding, that was one of my favorite overall value picks, even though it was the number 5 overall pick in this draft.
Yeah, I think if Travis Hunter didn't exist, right, if we could just, because sometimes, draft class to draft class, you don't always get that guy sitting there at the top of the draft that's special. If he didn't exist, I don't think a lot of people bat an eye if Mason Graham goes number 2 overall, right? Like, he's that good of a prospect. It's not as if you traded down and all of a sudden you're, woe is me, we're just like flipping a coin to see if a guy's going to be good. It's like, no, Mason Graham's going to be a darn good defensive tackle. And that was obviously a big need for the Cleveland Browns heading into this draft. So I love that one as well. My favorite one, it's one of the teams that got talked about a bunch because of the trade they made, but the first pick they made, Atlanta Falcons, Jalen Walker, that is a cornerstone piece to a defense, in my opinion. I cannot believe he fell to 15 with, one, just how good his tape was this past fall. He is a guy that is going to be just a playmaker. We had some guys drafted like a Mykel Williams, like a Shamar Stewart in similar ranges who you hope can develop into guys who make splash plays, who can be difference makers. Jalen Walker, you flip on any game last year, and he's making a play routinely that just like he shouldn't make, that other guys can't make. And also, it's one of the biggest needs for the Falcons. They have over the past decade had the fewest sacks in the NFL. They've desperately needed an edge rusher, it seems like, every single year. Finally got to address it this year. And lastly, like, Walker is what the modern edge rusher looks like, with all these hybrid schemes that have guys roaming up front that you don't know what they're going to do any given play. Can he drop into coverage? Can he play against the run in the A-gap if if he's lined up there in a 2-point stance? Can he rush the passer off the edge? He can do all that. So for Raheem Morris and that defense, he got a new chess piece that I just think is going to make life difficult on opposing offenses. So that one to me really stood out.
Yeah, and this was, again, something that the Falcons, I mean, you look at all the mock drafts over the last couple months, it was usually some type of edge rusher, and it was rare to see Jalen Walker all the way at number 15. I thought a lot of people had him going number 8 overall to an in-division rival, Panthers. So it was really surprising to see that he was still available. And to your point, the fact that he can play off the ball at linebacker, maybe not great in coverage, but has immense range, and then gives you a little bit of that Micah Parsons, Von Miller vibe on the outside at a similar size with the bend, speed to power conversion. Again, we're not going to factor in anything that they did after with the James Pierce trade up, but that pick alone, I think, made a lot of sense for an organization that desperately, desperately needed more edge rushing help.
All right, what was the biggest surprise pick of last night for you?
So you hinted at it, Mike. I think Mykel Williams going to the 49ers at number 11 overall. We just heaped a ton of praise on Jalen Walker. He was still on the board. James Pierce, we talked about him a bunch, how good of a prospect he was. He was still on the board. And it felt like the 49ers, after losing Malik Collins and Javon Hargrave, their biggest need was actually at defensive tackle. Derek Harmon was still on the board. Kenneth Grant, we saw go a few picks later to the Falcons. It was even Walter Nolan, who went to the Cardinals at 16. It felt like any one of those players had a much higher floor than Mykel Williams. And if you look back 2022, his first season at Georgia, you felt like, man, Mykel Williams, in a couple years, he might be the first overall pick in the draft. But he just never improved from that first season at Georgia. His career pressure rate was 11% in the SEC, which is not very good at all, especially for someone who's a first-round edge rusher, much less someone who goes inside the top 12. So for a 49ers organization that has seen a lot of their defensive pieces leave in free agency or, just not on the team anymore, I was surprised that they didn't go with someone who I think would be more of a ready-to-go player while they still have Brock Purdy relatively cheap and are ready to win now. I think there's a chance that Mykel Williams can develop, but I think this was a very risky pick for the 49ers at 11 overall.
No, I don't disagree with anything you said, because I am surprised they didn't go for more of an immediate impact guy, because Williams, I do think, is a project. Now, I think he'd be an impact run defender early on. Maybe that's why they went with him. They obviously lost a handful of games down the stretch because teams ran out the clock on them. They couldn't get those late stops. But I will just defend it a little bit by saying this. He was my favorite developmental edge in this draft class. His tool set, his skill set at only 20 years old still, one of the youngest draft prospects in the entire class, is built to play 4-3 defensive end. And he was not that in college. He was a 3-4 defensive end at Georgia. Kicked in on the interior, had to two-gap a lot, had to eat up blocks. He is a guy who, if you just let him go, be an edge rusher, wide nine, out on the edge, get ahead of steam, use those long arms, I think you could see a much different type of player in the NFL. And he goes to a spot that is going to let him do that and has one of the best defensive line coaches in Chris Kosarek. So all those put together, it might not be an immediate impact guy, but I'd be very surprised if he is not an impact player by year 3, year 4, and justifying this pick ultimately. My biggest surprise has to be Emeka Egbuka to the Bucs. This is one, every year there's one pick, because anytime you mock a player to a team and it's not a need, when the Bucs obviously have a need at safety, they have other needs on this roster, they objectively do not have an immediate need at wide receiver. They have Mike Evans. You just re-signed Chris Godwin. You liked what you saw from Jalen McMillan, last year's third rounder as a rookie. There's not like a spot for him right away. And so if you put this in a mock draft a week ago, Bucs fans would have been down your throat. They would have been saying, what the heck are you doing? You have no clue. The Bucs don't need a wide receiver. That's why it's a surprise. I'm not going to hate on the pick, though. Emeka Egbuka is awesome. These are old wide receivers. Chris Godwin's going to be 30 after this season. Mike Evans is 31 and going to be on in a contract year. He may not be there much longer. He will see the field, maybe not only this year, but year 2, year 3, year 4. It feels like when Jack Smith and Jigba got drafted by the Seattle Seahawks. A lot of people are like, how's he going to fit in as wide receiver 3 there? Not a lot of people are questioning that pick now, after he was their top dog last year and now the only guy left in that receiving core from when he was drafted. So that's what this pick feels like to me. I don't think a lot of people are going to be questioning it. It's a long-term move for a team that has been exceptional in terms of their decision-making in the Jason Light era. So it was a surprise, but not a bad pick in my opinion.
Yeah, I was a little surprised in that. I mean, I agree with a lot of what you just pointed out about the whole dynamics of the long-term ability of this pick with Egbuka at 19. I didn't feel like he was the 19th best player or even close in this class. He played more in the slot as his career progressed at Ohio State. We know that Chris Godwin is best as that big slot receiver in Tampa Bay. And it did feel like there were better players. Malachi Starks was still on the board, obviously. Nick Manwari, we still haven't seen even get selected. So I think that would have been a better marriage of value and need for this team that we know can win the NFC South, that can win playoff games. Baker Mayfield is, getting close to 30. I think going in a different direction in round 1, probably on defense, and then flipping back and maybe adding a receiver on day 2 would have been a better way to approach this draft for the Buccaneers.